Howdy y'all, welcome back to Texas Dan and That Brass Show. In our previous episode, we covered the high brass, which was our B-flat trumpet, and of course we introduced our double French horn, which could go from an F concert horn to a B-flat concert horn. In this episode, we are covering all that is low brass. That includes our trombone, our baritone, and next episode we're going to tackle the tuba. But let's go ahead and start off with our trombone. Now, trombone, back in the early 1500s, was technically considered a trumpet at the same time. As you can see, kind of like what I explained in the high brass episode, how trumpet used to be one long rod with only the mouthpiece at the end and the bell. Well, it was the same exact thing as the trombone as well. Of course, later on in the 1600s, they would later classify it as its own instrument rather than a cousin of the trumpet. They would call it, and don't you laugh at me, called the sackbut. It wasn't until the 1800s and onwards into the 20th century that the trombone would later get its name. Now, this instrument that I'm holding up here is one of our beginner horns that I use here at the middle school. This is technically a B-flat trombone, but just because it's a B-flat trombone doesn't mean that it can't read in concert pitch. Now, when you look at an instrument like this and you look at the music that goes along with it, it's always going to be written in bass clef, but it's always going to be transcribed to a C concert. So just because it's called a B-flat trombone, kind of like, I guess you could call it, its distant cousin, the trumpet, these guys can still read in C concert. Now, when it comes to playing trombone, most professionals like to choose from the smallest bore to the largest bore. Now, this trombone that we have right here, this is one of our smaller bore trombones. Now, the question is, what the heck does he mean by bore? The bore is actually the tubing that shows right here. The smaller the tubing, the more that this trombone would be more accustomed to beginner all the way to jazz combos. The wider the bore of this tubing, the more you could probably use it for symphonic studies, or in this case, a symphonic band. But since we're here with a smaller bore instrument, we're going to focus only on, in this case, trying to get a good sound out for our beginners. Now, there are some times where the trombone can actually have what we call an F attachment. That's a little trigger, kind of like you guys saw earlier in the high brass, like our French horn. In this case, this trombone, if it had that F attachment, it could give you a bigger quality of range. In this case, anytime you have to press that trigger, it always takes down the note that you're playing that trigger on down by a fourth, and it always brings you down to a lower register, much more lower than expected. Trust me, using those triggers can come in handy sometimes, especially when you're doing symphonic band or if you even join a symphony orchestra. Now, remember what I said earlier about different bores on different trombones? The larger the bore, the more it would be more for, let's say, symphonic band or symphony orchestra. The smaller the bore, it would be mostly for, in this case, a concert band, beginner band, or in this case, jazz band at times. Well, the same thing goes for mouthpiece. Now, this here is a baritone mouthpiece, but did you know that you can also use a baritone mouthpiece for a trombone mouthpiece? They're exactly the same way. Now, if you look very carefully at this mouthpiece, you'll notice, just like the trumpet, we have the rim, we have the cup, and we have our shank. Now, if you look very carefully, you'll see that this shank goes down slightly. This is what we call a smaller shank, hence smaller bore. So the smaller the shank, the more you're going to have to find a trombone that has a small bore. Now, I have another mouthpiece that can also be used for trombone and baritone, except this one has a much more thicker and much more larger shank. So something like this would not fit into a trombone beginner-wise. This would have to be something done for a much more professional model, hence bigger bore, symphonic band, or symphonic orchestra, or in this case, bass trombones. Same thing would go for a little bit more of a heavier baritone set as well. So, since we're only dealing with small bore today, I don't have any big bore on me, but we're going to deal with the small bore trombone in this case. Now, proper mouthpiece embouchure, same exact way as you would do it on your French horn. If you had paid attention in the last episode with our high brass, you would see that it's going to be the exact same way, same exact posture and placement as the French horn. If you're just tuning in right now, pay very close attention. This goes for any students or any directors that are going to be teaching low brass later on in the future. So, remember what we discussed. What we want to do is form that and we want to set our corners. We want to be sure that we're setting that anchor, and we want to be sure that we are keeping this chin nice and flat. So, once we get all that set, the rim of the mouthpiece is going to be placed, and again, it's about guesstimating, right where the teeth and the gums meet. So you would have to find that, and then just like a teacup, bring it up. So, let's see if we can form that embouchure really quick. And remember, how do we form that? Think about a favorite dish that you love. It could be pizza, sushi. In this case, since I'm from Texas, I love my ribeye steak, medium rare. I love it still crying for his mama. So now, with that being said, think about that dish in front of you. Take a big whiff. You notice what's happening here. The corners are getting set. These are your anchors. The corners are going to get firm, and they're going to set the anchor for you, while the chin is going to be nice and flat. Now, as we bring it up, let's try it now. Set those corners. Bring it up. And now, when we play, we're going to think with the sound. Two. Two. So here we go. We're going to do it in 4 counts. And 1, 2, breathe in, and. Try it again. 2, ready, and. Now I'm going to face this way. Ready, and. One last time. Here we go. Ready, and. And you can even do the exact same thing with our bigger bore or our bigger shank mouthpiece. So let's see if we can do the exact same thing. So once again, bring it up, set your embouchure, nice and flat chin, and here we go. Same thing, 4 counts and we're in. 5, 6, breathe in, here we go. One more time, ready and play. Now facing this way, here we go, and remember the M2, here we go, one more time. Now, one thing you don't want to do, don't ever breathe in through your nose. I know I just made that mistake earlier right now. Try to use the corners of your mouth when you breathe in, hence the M-poo. Just like so. Try not to use your nose. Sometimes that won't give you, or I should say not sometimes, all the time, it won't give you the full benefit of a good, clean, warm airstream. Always breathe in from the gut through the corners of your mouth. So now, it's time to get to know your trombone a little bit more. So, as you can see, the trombone always comes with 2 parts, your slide and of course the rest of the tubing plus the bell itself. Now, concentrating on this part, there are 2 things, actually let me rephrase myself, 3 things you should know about this part of the trombone. You got your bell, you got what we call the tuning slide. So in case you know that you're out of tune, it's very easy to just pull it out and adjust. Pulling out if it's too sharp, pushing in if it's too flat, as you can see. Pulling out, and of course, pushing in. And of course, you can also take this out in case there's water in there and you just need to get it out. Now, this part right here is what I like to call our USB. If you can look very carefully, it kind of looks like a little golden USB. In some cases, some trombones have a little bit more of a circular one. That's what they call the hockey puck. Hockey puck or USB. This little baby is here just to help keep the counterbalance of the actual instrument to yourself. So that way when you bring it up, it's already balancing with your body and the weight of the trombone. Next, we have the actual slide itself. Now this slide is attached to the hook. Once you unleash that hook, you're ready to go, and you're able to go as far as you want. Now be very careful with these. It's very easy for this part of the slide to come out, especially for you beginners. Whenever you play, of course, you're going to get a little excited. You're going to be like, ha, 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 and then all of a sudden, that happens. If that happens, it's okay. Just let your director know. Directors, it's okay too if you make that mistake. The way it came out is going to be the way it comes back in, but be very careful when you do that. Students, if you have trouble with that, let your director know. They'll be able to give you the idea of how to put it right back in. But of course, once you're not playing it, be sure that you latch it back up, as you can see right there. So we have our slide. This is what we call our water key. Just in case you've been playing too long, this is where that spit comes out, as you can see. Of course, there's no spit in there right now. Last but not least, we have what we call the bumper. So when it's time to relax on the trombone, this is how you're going to put it down. The bumper is what's going to protect the trombone from any damage or anything else that might come its way. As long as you're holding on to it and the bumper is in its place, the rest of the instrument can't get hurt. Now, putting together the instruments, what you're going to do is you're going to take this part, the top part of the bell, with your trombone, and you're going to place it in on this longer joint that my thumb is pointing at. Not this one, because this is where your mouthpiece is going to go, but on this one. Once you put it in, all you have to do is twist it in. And like I said earlier, with our USB, that was kind of be serving as our counterbalance. So what we do in this case, let me adjust this. So what we do in this case, counterbalance, and what you do is on your left shoulder, you bring it up, just like so. I know, in 3D, right? Now, let me show you on this angle so you get the idea. When you bring it up, USB is going to help with that counterbalance. Or if you don't have a USB, you might have a hockey puck. It's a little bit more of a circular one. Once again, it's going to help keep that balance, just like so. And then all you need is your mouthpiece. That's going to be placed right there, and you're ready to go.